My guest today is Paul Rimmer. Paul's the head coach at Next Generation MMA. He's coached UFC fighters Molly McCann and Chris Fishgold, and Paddy Pimblett, who's defending his title on Cage Warriors. So we had a really good discussion about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, what it takes to succeed on and off the mats, and setting up his business, as well as some really good lessons to learn about coaching, or if you're in any kind of role where you teach. If you like the kind of stuff I'm doing here, you can subscribe on YouTube. I'm also on SoundCloud and iTunes if you search for Digital Gnosis. And if you subscribe to those feeds, then you'll be able to see whenever new content's coming out. So this is episode number 13 with Paul Rimmer. Enjoy it, guys. And obviously, you've been around the UK MMA scene a long time, and so I thought you'd be a really good podcast guest for those reasons, as well as, you know, the guys you've coached and all the stuff that you're doing now.
Okay.
I thought you'd kind of want to talk a little bit about the origins of your gym, maybe the origins of what got you into it yourself, and what your kind of goals and stuff are now. I suppose my podcast is about trying to inspire people who are doing things that are useful, so as listeners can kind of, you know, maybe I want to give that a try, or maybe I want to set up my own business and stuff, and that, you know, they can get something out of it, as well as a bit of entertainment and a bit of a, you know, just a good story about someone doing something. Okay, cool.
Martial arts for me has been like a lifetime journey. Wasn't something I picked up in my 20s or anything like that. I started when I was 5. My dad was looking for something to do with us, and he took us to the cinema, and Karate Kid 2 was on, and I watched it, and I was like, I want to do karate. So my dad was like, okay, cool, and then enrolled me in a judo club.
Yeah.
And I did judo for quite a while, to be honest. It was a good few years, and then sort of as I got into probably about 10 or 11, my uncle was a black belt in like traditional jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And he was at a club, and he was like, oh, come on, have a look at what we do. And I kind of went down and done traditional jiu-jitsu, and I got like a junior black belt in that, and then I got like a second degree black belt in that, and I got a brown belt in judo. And then while I was probably about 15, I think it was 15 at the time, the first sort of UFC and stuff had happened. So like when the first UFC had happened, I just seen it, and I was like, wow, I need to learn this. It's a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So like I went home and I said to mum and dad, I was like, are we doing anything over the summer? They were like, no, why? And I was like, I want you to send me to the Gracie Academy. I want to go and learn Jiu-Jitsu. And they were kind of like, well, we're not going to do that. So I was a bit like bummed out and stuff. And then sort of just like kind of stuck with the traditional Jiu-Jitsu route. And when I was in school, there was a lad that said to me, oh, we've got a kung fu master that lives at the bottom of my street. And I was like, oh really? Yeah. And he was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, you should see it. These like weapons and everything, it's sick. He trains in his back garden. So I went down there, and we look over the back garden. There's like a little Chinese guy who comes out and starts kicking off a moan at us. And quite luckily for me, I became his student, and he was like a legit kung fu master. I know it's like funny to like MMA guys and that sort of stuff, but he was legit. He was one of the Ip Man students, and really, really highly regarded in China and stuff. So I started training with him, and I got like really into like traditional martial arts, like real traditional martial arts. I trained full time every day after school, weekends, the whole thing. And whilst I was doing that, kind of, I was thinking, well, if I don't know this, like, what other things don't I know? And then I started looking at kind of like Dog Brothers, which was like stick fighting martial arts and that sort of stuff. And like, I've always been really into like exploring anything. Like, I consider myself to be a martial artist and not a combat sports athlete, is like the what people like to call themselves these days. So when I was doing that, I found a guy that was doing something similar, and I went into one of his classes, and we done it. And then on the way out, I noticed he had a sign up saying he did Brazilian style jiu-jitsu. So I just kind of walked back and I was like, do you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And he goes, it's not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's very similar to it.
Right.
So his background was judo, sambo, and traditional jiu-jitsu sort of thing, but he knew more grappling than I did at the time.
Yeah.
So we started grappling and stuff, and from there I started doing like the first sort of amateur MMA competitions that they had in the UK at the time, with Combat Sports Open Trials, I think they were called. And I did one or two of them, and I did quite good in them. I thought so. I was kind of like, I want to take this further. So I said to him, will you train me for the next one? And he said yeah, and then he kind of reneged on what he said, and then we fell out. And so I wasn't like doing any grappling or any sort of MMA at the time. So I called him up a few months later and said, look, I'm really sorry for what's happened between us, can we sort something out? And he said, I don't think I can teach anymore. I think you should go to America.
Right.
So I took his advice and decided to go and travel China instead.
Okay.
So I went the other side. I went to traditional martial arts. I went and travelled across China. I trained with like some of the world's best masters in their respective martial arts. And then I came home, and I hadn't done any grappling for ages, and sport martial arts, and I got really quite heavy into what's called sanshao, which is kind of...
I've heard of that.
It's kind of kickboxing and wrestling on a raised platform. It's a really good sport. It's actually a really good base for MMA, I think, as well. So it's mixing striking and takedowns, where at the time, not really many martial arts did that. You could do judo and wrestling, or you could do kickboxing and Thai boxing, but there wasn't that sort of mix. So I studied sanshao, had some sanshao matches and stuff, and then the actual way I got into real Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is quite funny. I was working as a civil servant, and working in the civil service, you get like quite a lot of perks with work, that the pay's not one of them. So I was literally sitting at a desk, and a girl who I work with sits down with a big smile on her face. I said to her, what are you so happy about? She's like, work's just gave me a year off to go travel in Australia.
Right.
And me being a punk at the time, just turned around and said, I want a year off.
Yeah.
So I'm literally marched into like the boss's office and was like, you gave her a year off, I want a year off. And they're like, what do you want a year off for? And I was like, I want to go and train martial arts in America. And they were like, okay, sound, your time off starts on April.
Right.
And I was like, okay. So I literally went back to my desk, rang my dad, and was just like, listen, I'm taking a year off. He's like, what for? And I was like, I'm going to go to America and learn martial arts. And he was like, all right, okay. So then I get up on the computer what I actually need to do this, and it's a lot of stuff. So basically, I sorted out within 2 days a bank loan, and then I emailed Chris Brennan, who I'd read about on like the old SF UK forums, that you could stay in his gym and learn, and I'd read about him in Grappling Magazine, and I really liked his attitude towards fighting with jiu-jitsu.
Right.
That's like a big thing for me, okay, fighting with jiu-jitsu. So I emailed Chris, and cut a long story short, I end up on a plane to California, living in a gym with his fighters, and it was the thing that changed my life. It really did. So being a stupid kid changed my life for the better, I would say. What
were the big kind of perspective shifts you had over there then? Was it that you decided, I want to set up my own gym when I get back, or that you were like, I want to pursue a career in fighting, and that came later? Literally, no. I as I say, I enjoy martial arts. So my thing was like, okay, I want to get to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. Okay. And for some reason, the thought of going to Brazil, it didn't really cross my mind. I wanted to go somewhere where people spoke English and they used it for MMA. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So I went to Chris's gym, and I loved his style of jiu-jitsu. So like, I walked into his gym. He said, hello, are you here to live here? I was like, yeah, I'm here to live here, blah, blah, blah. He goes, okay, are you training now? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to train now. And then I stepped on the mat, and like the first thing I learned was like an inside heel hook from 50-50. Right. It was like, that was my introduction to jiu-jitsu. Was straight away was like what most people would consider not to be the norm. It wasn't in a gi. It was
heel hooks. So I just started training straight away, and then literally the people that I live with at the gym and the people I got to train with, I believe I was really, really lucky at the time. One of the guys I lived with was Eddie Bravo's first student. So like he dragged me up in the mornings and he'd teach me twister, rubber guard, lockdown, that sort of stuff. And Eddie was a purple belt at the time, so you're going back a long time. Probably might have been one of the first people to ever learn any 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, because that didn't come for I think a couple of years later. I had a guy that had sort of mastered really, really good basics of jiu-jitsu, and he was teaching me stuff, and then I'd have like Chris's classes, I'd have training stuff, and I went from like, I think it was like 280 pounds down to like 200 pounds in like 6 months. I mean, I trained my arse off, and again, I didn't have a goal at the end of it. I wasn't thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to fight MMA. I wasn't thinking I'm going to teach jiu-jitsu. I was just literally enjoying the training, what I'd done. I was doing kickboxing, doing jiu-jitsu. There's a guy called James Wilkes who won the Ultimate Fighter. James was really heavily into Jeet Kune Do and stuff like that. You know, I was like bouncing ideas off him. For me, it was just like a big martial arts holiday, and that was what I loved about it. And then came back to England, and while I was living at Chris's, I met a guy called Jason Tan who fought in the UFC, runs the MMA Academy down the road, and we came back and we opened up a class which was in the Fights and Fitness Studio, which later became Carbon, and we started training together, and I sort of fell into kind of like the coaching role, and he fell more into he was going to compete role, and it started from there really. Then we trained guys like Terry Etim, Paul Sass, loads of other sort of well-known lower level guys. Didn't quite make the UFC and stuff at the time. And then it just kind of rolled from there really. You know, we had like 2 classes a week, and then we turned into 3 classes a week, and then we ended up opening like a small gym. We started becoming like one of the main UK MMA teams because we knew how to train people, because at the time a lot of people would like learn jiu-jitsu in one place, learn boxing in one place, so like them sort of gyms didn't really exist at the time. We had like a full-time MMA gym that was based a lot around jiu-jitsu, because we were both passionate jiu-jitsu guys, and they just kept rolling on. Then we got a bigger gym, went our separate ways, and then from like that moment, that's when I really think that my coaching career really started to flourish. Okay, because that was when I really stepped up what I was doing. So like the people from like the next sort of era of fighters are like Rosie Sexton, Fishgold, Danny Roberts, Paddy. You know, I mean, these guys were literally coming into the gym from scratch, and it was turning them into monsters. And the thing that you look at the most of them have in common is the grappling skills. So that's where I really think that that sort of mentality and attitude that have been putting into people over the years really started to kind of like flourish in that sort of environment, when it was kind of like me, if that makes sense. I got to pick like better Thai coaches, better really put my stamp on the MMA that we were doing at the time.
Did you find it was difficult at first to kind of get it going, like get new people in through the door or anything like that?
No, I don't. I did worry about that at the time, because obviously, you're talking about like when a business split happens, it becomes kind of stressful, you know. And at that time, Jason was in the UFC. He was well more well known than I was, and luckily for me, you know, people really like my coaching, so I didn't struggle at all. The gym went from strength to strength, to be honest with you. So I was quite happy with that, and he's got his gym, and he did well as well, you know. So, you know.
Was there a point that you kind of decided that you wanted to be like as good of a coach that you wanted to be as well, and really started looking at?
I think I'd always been that. I think I'd always been a good coach. I'd done that, but I couldn't hide behind anyone else. It was me. This is me. Right, Next generation.
Yeah.
This is what I do. Boom, and straight out there. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sense. Yeah. Have you kind of what have been the main difficulties then of coaching and starting your own gym for yourself with it?
I would love to turn around and say, oh, there was a lot of problems, this problem, that problem, but I've loved every second of it. I don't really see anything as problems that can't be solved. I think that's one of the good things about jiu-jitsu. Teaches you patience, how to solve issues, and you know, things get tough, and you know, shit hits the fan, but it's how you kind of recover from it that sort of make you. I find that the most important things in terms of kind of running a martial arts business are actually being able to realise what your role is and putting that out there. So again, like I touched on it earlier, where I was talking about how I came from a traditional martial arts background. Mm-hmm. When you come from a traditional martial arts background, your sensei or your sifu is not just a coach. They become like a father figure to you. Mm-hmm. And you can go to them with problems, and you can speak to them, and you can do stuff like that. And that's how I always wanted to be. I don't want anyone to call me Master Paul or anything like that. I don't believe in them sort of titles, but I believe that if I'm training you and I'm teaching you, it just doesn't end where everyone leaves the mat. It ends where you need it to end.
Right.
That makes sense to you?
Yeah, no, I was actually earlier today listening to, I think it was one of Joe Rogan's most recent podcasts, where he talked about a very similar thing, whether it was like an idea of Carl Jung or someone like that you have the one father, you know, like biological family father, but then kind of there's another father who's like, it used to be kind of like an apprenticeship or something like that, and they teach you a trade, and then it becomes more like about you sacrificing your potential and youth to become something rather than kind of wasting away doing nothing with your life.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, I mean, you know, if we were talking about it in like traditional martial arts terms, I have a load of disciples that kind of come to me for advice and fight martial art and do them sort of things, and that was always one of my strengths, and I think it's where some coaches come undone, which is like, you know, I always find fighters to be quite selfish, which they need to be to get to the top.
Yeah.
You know, I think Darren Till talked about something the other week where he's like about, you know, he doesn't care about his daughter, care about his family, and like, you know, a lot of people slate him for that, but I understood where he was coming from.
Yeah.
You know, to get to the top in any sort of sport, you have to be selfish, you have to cut stuff out your life, you have to do them sort of things.
Or someone else will.
Else will. Yeah. And then a lot of people go, oh yeah, I don't want to train under a coach that's never fought because like they can help me with these sorts of things. But the problem with a lot of people that fight is they're all fucking selfish. So what happens is they don't have the time for other people because the whole fight career they were selfish, and you think that changes once they become coaches. You think they become from like one state of mind into another. It's not the case. In my experience, and if you look at MMA and you look at all the best coaches in MMA, most of them didn't fight.
Right. Well, one of the big things, like John Will talks about teaching a lot, because he's got a very kind of interesting philosophy when it comes towards it. Like, you know, he's I don't think he's really done as much. He's done some stuff, but he's really been focused on his teaching for, you know, longer than I've probably been alive. And he's got this kind of philosophy of if he's not feeling good to coach that day, he's not even going to turn up because of the gravity of people people are going to their jobs, they're paying, they're taking time away from the family to come down and stuff, and he really takes that as like a big responsibility to teach people. And you know, it's like, I find it interesting how the importance he places on that, and I see a lot of people who just want to become like PTs or something like that because they've done a bit of a sport, and it is like a big paradigm shift to go from coaching from like doing something for yourself to coaching?
Well, for example, there's a massive difference between teaching and coaching. So anyone can teach, anyone can show something that they know. Anyone can do that, okay? But then coaching's something different. Teaching is like a 5-10 minute instructional in a lesson, and coaching's a 15 to 20 year investment in someone's career. There's a massive difference between it. Yeah, did that make sense?
Yeah.
And like I said, if you look at like the well-known coaches in MMA, you have Danaher and Faraz and Greg Jackson and them sort of guys. Their focus has never been on themselves and their successes. It's been upon their students and their students' successes. Yeah. And I think that's like a massive thing that most people don't realise. I think to be a successful coach, just like to be a successful fighter, you have to be selfish. To be a successful coach, you have to be the exact opposite. You're basically saying, I'm going to give you everything that I have to try to get you to be somewhere. And I think that's what a lot of people miss out. You just spoke about John, and John is an excellent teacher. We had him here for a seminar not long ago, and he blew me away. I thought he was fantastic, but I'm not like that. It doesn't matter what problems I've got going on outside the gym. It doesn't matter if it's my birthday. It doesn't matter.
You put in that.
I'll turn up. I'll be here. If you need me 365, I'm available. Fucking, if I'm on holiday with the family and you call my phone, I'll answer. I'm that sort of person, because it's not a relationship between instructor, coach and student, for example, that just gets left for no reason, if that makes sense.
No, I've noticed, because I help Adam out with the intro classes 2 times a week, and I've been doing that for about a year now, and I've really noticed people kind of come in and their posture's all different, and obviously like it's a new experience for them. If they're they've seen the UFC or something, think, shit, I'm gonna go and fight, even if it's just jiu-jitsu, like they think they've got this thing built up in their mind, they can be nervous, but you can tell people come from shitty jobs, they don't want to work, they've got not a lot of self-confidence and stuff, and you see them kind of as soon as you teach them side control, you like just connect your chest to the other person, they're leaving like a meter gap because they're just nervous to touch someone else, or they're shaking, and you see them come back after a few weeks and their posture's changed, or they've got more confidence, they're they're moving differently. And I think I've seen people's kind of mindset towards life and stuff change just through improvement in jiu-jitsu and getting into their body, getting a bit of confidence. And it's definitely so much more than just kind of do shrimps up and down the mat for 30 minutes and then it's off, because it kind of ripples out into people's lives. And
of course it does. And that, one of the best things about jiu-jitsu, especially jiu-jitsu more than MMA, is it creates this like kind of like brotherhood that everyone feels comfortable in, that you have a place in. If that makes sense. And then if you combine that atmosphere with like a good leader, you are pretty much all the way there for what you need. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I've seen the reverse side of it as well in some gyms where like you can get someone who's very like abrasive, and they tend you get a lot of them gym politics happening where people all fall out, and you kind of, when you go to those sorts of gyms and train as well, you can feel that atmosphere. Like you'll be sitting down to warm up and no one will be like talking to each other and stuff, and the kind of more the gyms where the coach is invested in bringing people up in their lives in a more general way, you can just kind of feel that in the atmosphere, and you can see it in people's like people then want to go and like what, as a result of jiu-jitsu, they're like, oh, maybe I can work for myself and do this, maybe I can do that, and it just like you were saying before, teaches you those lessons that apply to business, that apply to just waking up in the morning and stuff, as opposed to just on the mat.
Yeah, I mean, you learn so many different lessons through jiu-jitsu, martial arts. I mean, the lessons are always there in anything that you look for, which should be kind of like work hard, put 100% into everything that you do, that sort of stuff, you know. I totally understand that. But, I mean, even with, like, regarding, like, atmosphere in the gym, I'll try to read the atmosphere in the gym, if that makes sense. Okay. Like if a lot of the guys that are in the class that I'm about to take have either already trained, or like they come in, they'll start looking tired, we'll do more of a light-hearted technical session. We'll have a laugh and a joke. We'll try to keep everyone alive for it. Some days I'll come in and I'll see everyone's like really up for it, and I'll be like, right, okay, and then I'll be more aggressive, I'll be harder, I'll be pushing people through the session. So kind of like I try to, almost like a comedian reading a crowd, I try to read the class, I try to see what the majority of them want right there and then in that lesson, which I think is like coaching and not teaching. That makes sense.
What is your kind of approach then towards your guys who train in terms of balancing all that like technique, strength and conditioning and stuff? Because I've been to some kind of gyms and MMA places where the atmosphere can be, it can be like your 7th session of the week, but it's like, and you've just finished sparring, but now it's time to do some circuits on the end because it's about being tough, and it's about I've been on the converse side of that where it's just all about just technique and flow roll, and like where do you think there's a balance in between? Do you think there's advantages to one over the other for like competing athletes?
There's no such thing as flow rolling.
Right.
That's the thing, right? Okay. If you're like flow rolling, you're not really rolling. You're drilling, if that makes sense. Okay. And that whole like, do you want to go light? Oh, I've got this. Do you want to go light? That never happens really. It always turns into one of you trying to go at the other one. It turns into a normal roll, which probably is what both people want at the end of the day. They just wants to make someone aware of an elbow and that sort of stuff. Like, I mean, in here, like we run our mixed martial arts sessions every morning, and we have three technical, 2 sparring sessions a week that we do in the morning just for the fight team. And then I'll work individually with the fighters on top of that as well. And then I'll direct them to classes that have other coaches and stuff in for development. So, for example, if I think someone needs to work on the jiu-jitsu, I'll be saying, come into these jiu-jitsu classes, or go and see this guy. He's going to really good at that. He's going to help you with what you need on top of what you're doing with me. In terms of strength and conditioning, we have like a fully equipped strength and conditioning gym upstairs. They get strength and conditioning plans, and luckily enough, because we're very close to university and a lot of young people like MMA, we've got like a lot of good strength and conditioning coaches that are training here with us. So we use them. And also, as the sport grows more, for example, Molly signed for the UFC, and then the UFC sent to this Performance Institute pack that had all these things that we were kind of like, oh shit, we need to know all this sort of stuff, marking it off, and we combine all that sort of stuff together. The people that assume that they know it all and they're on the right path are the worst sort of people.
Right.
Like, I always assume when I'm teaching people stuff, and I'll say it to them, I'm saying like, okay, for example, I watched like Chris Brennan taught me how to do like a knee slice pass from half guard, and I taught it that way for years, and then I watched Marcelo do it, and I was like, oh shit, maybe I've been doing this wrong all this time. And I'll go into a class and go, okay, we're going to do knee slice passing. Now, I know I've taught you guys this way in the past, but I actually believe that this way is better. Like, I'm totally willing to go, oh shit, maybe I was wrong, and maybe this way is better. And I always think that's the best way to be. If everything I'm doing, if I'm like 100% this is the correct way, well, maybe it's not. Maybe you do it in a different way. Maybe I'll walk onto the mat and I'll see 2 white belts doing a guard pass, and I go, oh shit, I should be doing that. I learn off everyone in the room. One of the biggest advancements in my own jiu-jitsu is teaching kids.
Right.
Because kids don't think like us. They don't hold back. They're like super confident and funny and do crazy stuff, and like I watch them, like we have a really, really good kids program at the Wirral Academy, and we didn't have any kids at all, and we went from training 4 kids to training 40 kids, and out of them 40 kids, a bunch of them just won the world championships, and like we've done that within like 4 years, and like I watch them and they do stuff, and then we'll go, why did you do that? And they'll say to us, oh blah, blah, and then we'll go, okay. Learning off anyone is the way you should be. You should be completely open-minded about learning stuff, because you don't know what people know and why they think about that. And that's one of the things I try to ask people now when we do jiu-jitsu. If you come for a private lesson, or you're in a class and you do something a particular way, like one of the things I'll say to you is, what were you thinking about when you did that? Because I think that's important.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because what people look at is how you do stuff, but as you know, jiu-jitsu is kind of an invisible thing. So like, you could be on the bottom of someone and You know,
it's about feeling weights and pressures and things.
Yeah, exactly. And not just that, but why are you doing that? Did that make sense to you?
I think there's a lot of like unarticulated stuff in jiu-jitsu though. Like so someone can, the sweeps and things, for example, I've integrated into my game. That I've noticed when I first learned them, I'd be told, you know, like say like a half guard sweep or something. You know, oh, you just want the underhook, you want to rake the leg back and do it and take them over. But when you've been doing it for 6 months, that sweep, or you've been doing it for a year and you've done it against different body types, you've done it in comp, you've done it against people who aren't going hard, you kind of get this weird feeling for what it's like a sixth sense, and it'd be really difficult to translate that into, like, if I was teaching someone, I couldn't say, you know, like, if they do this, you can kind of feel in the hips, they want to base this way, they want to move. It's like this weird,
see, like everyone always says, you know, you got the old classic, jiu-jitsu's like chess. Like, jiu-jitsu is fuck all like chess. I hate that analogy. Okay, so let me explain to you. In chess, I move, and then you get to think about it for a while, and then you move.
Yeah.
And then I get to think about what you do for a while, and then you move. It's fuck all like chess. Jiu-jitsu is like driving a car, okay? When you're driving a car, you've got to be aware at all times of what's going on around you, and people can throw all sorts of shit at you, make driving mistakes that you've got to correct yourself on the fly. And the whole time that you're doing it, you almost go into like an autopilot mode. You get in the car when you finish work, you put the radio on, you do all your little things that you do, and then all of a sudden you're at home. But you didn't really think the whole time about when you were doing it.
Yeah.
That's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. You know, like picking apart an entire five-minute roll that you do maybe 6, 7, 8 rounds of, and then picking holes and all them things. What happens is you slap hands, bump fists with the first guy, and then you lie on the mat at the end of the roll with the 8th guy, and you're like, fuck, what a great session that was. But you didn't really concentrate on all them little bits that you were doing during them rolls.
Yeah, you go into like a meditation zone of flow state if you're lucky, but yeah.
So for my own jiu-jitsu, what I've been trying to do lately is not try to do that. I've been trying to actively focus and concentrate on every minute and every second of every round that I do, removing all the little blockades and little things that people do, and try to make them roll my roll.
What's purpose? What are the benefits you're getting out of that, or what? How come you're trying to do that?
So I'm not just rolling, if that makes sense. I'm not just mindlessly rolling and doing that sort of stuff.
Is it so it's like I want to work on this particular guard pass or something, or I want to observe how I respond? Like what's
more than anything, I'm trying to shut other people's games down, if that makes sense. So I'll get to a position and then someone might frame on a hip, so like rather than just like maybe doing like a half-hearted pass when I'm tired, I'm like actively removing a frame from the hip, and then say I get to a good position, tap the guy, and then we come back again. I'll try to redo the same movements and then re-shut down that thing. So I'm realising they're automatic movements by not being automatic, if that makes sense.
I get it. It's interesting because I've not thought about it like that. I've thought about kind of, you know, your standard drilling, micro drilling and all that stuff. And, I guess every once in a while I probably think, you know, I'm going to try and go for this particular submission. So instead of, you know, if I've got the opportunity to come on top, instead I'll try and come underneath and do that or whatever. But I've not thought about. Well,
if you take like, I mean, what I'm talking about is like, so let's say I mount you and I go for an armbar and I throw my leg over and I sit back and you grab your hands together, and then I'm trying to get the arm free, and maybe I get it, maybe I don't. Okay, so then I get it, we slap hands, we bump fists, we roll again, and this time when I get to mount, I grab your other hand and keep it away from the hand, and then I take the arm again. Yeah, I got rid of that problem.
So you're improving the process. It's like each time you increment through it, you add a little.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, you know, I'm sure most people do that themselves anyway, but I do it in a conscious way, so I can make it an unconscious thing. Yeah. So when I go back into doing like autopilot sort of rolling, unconsciously I'm correcting them mistakes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's an interesting way of. I find it cool how people kind of approach jiu-jitsu completely differently, because the old school view of just drilling it out and stuff. I know you're a fan of kind of like isolation rounds. Is that right in jiu-jitsu, or like having a resisting partner rather than just kind of
confining? I'm a massive fan of that sort of stuff, but that's why, I mean, just touching back on what you said, that's why I ask people, what were you thinking about when you did that? Oh, I don't know. Well, why don't you know what you were thinking about when you did that movement? Does that make sense? Like, maybe you should be thinking about what you did when you made that movement, if that makes sense. And yeah, I'm a fan of. I am a fan of drilling rounds, which I think most people should be. But I'm also a massive learning technique sort of thing. Like when people talk about teaching jiu-jitsu or coaching jiu-jitsu, that there is massive differences. So like when I'm coaching jiu-jitsu, I have like a plan, which is when you watch like a TV series and in one episode, like a box set, in one episode of the box set there's like a particular story, but in the background there's a story going on that covers the whole sort of box set. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how I try to teach jiu-jitsu. So like we'll try to like do certain things, like let's say we're doing like rear naked chokes from the back and that sort of stuff. As we're moving on, that theme will cross for a couple of months, because all the techniques that we learn over that theme will cross back into that theme, and subconsciously you're getting better at stuff that you don't even know that you're getting better at, because it's in the whole theme. So like I try to teach like one particular area a month, and as we're teaching over that month, I'll just randomly come away from it and teach something that has nothing to do with it, but in reality has everything to do with it, if that makes sense. So for example, we're drilling back takes, rear naked chokes, all that sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden I'll just start having everyone drilling triangles, and everyone will be like, why the fuck are we drilling triangles? That's got nothing to do with back takes. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, okay, right, what I want you to do is I want you to drill the guy on top, turns onto his side, and then turns on top into guard. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everyone finds himself on the back, and then the partner's turned into the guard, and what's there?
Yeah,
triangles.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So I'm improving them areas for when they make mistakes, when they do stuff.
Do you find because of your kind of like your jiu-jitsu and grappling universe over here and your MMA universe, do you find in terms of strategy and approach that they're fairly similar, or quite kind of different things?
Yeah and no.
Because obviously there's more I don't know, the athleticism side of it or the aggression side of it in the MMA universe is kind of plays a bit more of a role than it can.
See, I love that. I think that's how jiu-jitsu should be played. Right. I mean, I don't like passive jiu-jitsu. I like really aggressive submission hunting based jiu-jitsu. And if you look at the guys that fight for me, and the girls, and they have really, really aggressive jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I mean, it was something I picked up on not long ago, because Molly fought in the UFC and she got choked, and then we sat down and she said, I really need to work on my jiu-jitsu. And one of the things I said to Molly was, I said, look, one of the problems is we've been working on like defensive jiu-jitsu for you. I was like, but I don't teach defensive jiu-jitsu. I teach really aggressive fighting based jiu-jitsu. I was like, so that's where we're going to go with it. You don't need to learn how to defend the back. You need to learn how to you being the one attacking the back, if that makes sense.
Interesting thing is, like, I had a guy called Gaz Ogden who trains at our gym. He's a cognitive hypnotherapist, so he kind of like coaches people through when they're struggling with competitions and stuff sometimes. And he was saying what you kind of focus on, you sort of do. So if someone says like, oh, don't let them get that armbar, you'll think about that armbar, and then you'll get armbar. So if you think if you're always on the defensive, like you're going to be on the defensive, because which is an interesting. So
that's what we've done with Molly. We've come away from her being okay. She's going to grapple you and you're going to defend, into okay, you're going to attack her with the grappling. That makes sense. So that was Molly's thing. She was always kind of like, if anyone takes me down, I've got to defend.
Mm-hmm.
So we've changed that around.
But then never come back on the top.
Exactly. Yeah. Molly's grappling's come on loads since we made that realization. But getting back to it, I really like aggressive jiu-jitsu. For my own jiu-jitsu, I'm always doing jiu-jitsu with fighting in mind. Mm-hmm. I'm a martial artist, okay? I'm always trying to strive for what I think will work if me and you have a disagreement in this podcast and you decide that you want to have a pop at me. That's what I'm training my jiu-jitsu for. That makes sense.
Yeah, so you're conscious of strikes and frames and things. You're not necessarily... I'm even in just the jiu-jitsu...
I'm always... In anything that I do, whether it's traditional martial arts, whether it's jiu-jitsu, boxing, Thai boxing, anything like that, I'm always working towards destroying an opponent as quickly, as efficiently as possible. Yeah. And that's what I try to implement into the guys in here. Yeah. The person that's got that down the best is Chris Fishgold. Yeah. If you watch one of his fights, there's a reason why his fights last around. It's because he has that naturally.
He got his first UFC appearance confirmed confirmed date or anything yet?
No.
No.
I couldn't tell you even if we did, because obviously,
of course,
but yeah, it hasn't. We're waiting to hear on that. But that's what I like. I like aggression. You know, you can't take a back seat in fighting.
Yeah,
you can't be there.
And when you do, people don't want to watch it, even if it's.
Yeah. And I do think that to an extent with jiu-jitsu. You know, I like
Paul Harris and Craig Jones recent match. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah.
Paul Harris is a really fucking good example of a guy that like was really fucking aggressive and breaking limbs and all that sort of stuff. You know, he was really good. And then obviously, jiu-jitsu is a problem-solving art. I think Belcher was the first person to solve the problem and go, oh, fuck you, you know, that's not what you're going to do to me. And then it grows from there, and then all of a sudden, you know, he enters the jiu-jitsu scene, and Gary Tonen's kind of like, oh, no, I'm better than you at what you do.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's on Palhares then. Has he gone, fuck, maybe I should go and train with John Danaher? Maybe I'd be better at leg locks if I went there and learned their leg locking system. But that's not what he's done. That makes sense? That's what Craig did. That's what Craig was like, okay, well, I'll go and train with the better leg lockers, and I'll become better at leg locks. And that, you know, that's the sort of, like I say, open-mindedness that like a martial artist should have. It's being able to turn around and say to yourself, ooh, maybe there is better than me out there. Maybe I should go and learn what they're doing to get myself better.
So how much of kind of martial artists, whether it's just one, you know, like whether it's just boxing, jiu-jitsu or MMA, do you think is psychological, and how much do you think is, you know, like, do you even think talent exists as a thing, or is it more...
You know, it's a tough one, because, like, you know, some people get really offended when you say, oh, he's a natural talent, and like, no, it's not, it's all hard work. It is hard work, yeah, no one's disputing that. And saying someone's a natural at something is okay to do, if that makes sense, because some people are naturally good at it. It's just the way it is. Some people work hard to be natural, and some people don't have to work hard to be natural at it. Do I believe that one guy can walk into the gym with better physical and mental attributes than another person and be much better, even though they haven't done any jiu-jitsu? Yeah, of course, that can be the case. But the problem is, at what point do them physical attributes hold them back to the point where the guy that didn't have them physical attributes wasn't held back by
like
them?
They're not working on new stuff because, you know, they're just winning every time with...
Well, let's put it into context. For example, okay, so everyone in the gym, let's go through like the physical attributes that make really good grapplers. Okay, so you got strength, speed, flexibility, conditioning. They're like the main four, aren't they? Okay, so let's say, for example, me and you were rolling.
Yeah.
You just started jiu-jitsu and you're really flexible. Okay.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
21.
21.
Yeah.
Okay. How long do you think, without work, that flexibility is going to hold up for?
6 months ago.
Because the injuries come with jiu-jitsu, and the stacking comes with jiu-jitsu, and the pressure comes with jiu-jitsu, and then all you're doing is jiu-jitsu, and you're not actually working on that flexibility anymore. And the flexibility goes, okay? Or you become a 50-year-old jiu-jitsu instructor with a bad back that has no flexibility, and then all your youth you spent working on that flexibility game, and then all of a sudden you have shit. You have nothing, okay? You still have all that jiu-jitsu that you've done, but the game that you played, you'd be like, oh, you know what, I wish back in the day, you should have seen me back in the day, kids. I was fucking everyone up with fucking inverted guard and stuff. And then it goes. And the same with strength. What happens when the stronger guy walks into the gym and that strength-based game that you play doesn't work anymore? And what happens when someone's faster? And what happens when someone's got better conditioning? What happens when all them things run out of steam? Okay? And don't get me wrong, when you meet a guy that has all them attributes, they're the fucking nightmare on the mat. That's why wrestlers have always done so well in grappling, because they have that drilled into them. They do gymnastics for the flexibility, they're strong, they're fast, they have great cardio. They do really good, okay? So, what's the missing attribute from them four things? Well, they're the physical attributes, but the mental attribute is the one that is the best. The guy that keeps turning up every day. The Aaron Chatfields, you know, them sort of guys. The ones that, like, they might get overlooked a little bit, but they're still the one that's last on the mat. The ones that, like, tough it out, they turn up every day, they give 100% every lesson. Then you take their mental attributes, and I always said to my students when I speak to them, I was like, I might not be the strongest guy in the mat, I might be the fastest, I've definitely not got the best cardio, I'm not flexible, but I'm smart. I'll be the sneakiest guy on the mat, I'll be the most consistent guy on the mat, I'll be the guy that works out, watches, I'll be figuring everything out, I'm the guy that takes enough time to take an interest in subconscious and conscious thought. I want to be that guy, because that way it doesn't really matter what happens to my body. I'll always be able to make the adjustments, the adaptations that I need to be on the mat doing good against guys. And believe me, when I'm on the mat doing rounds, like, you know, most of the guys I'm doing my rounds with are brown and really high level fucking purple belt guys. They're the ones that I always try to pick out, because they're the ones that are going to give me the most problems and not injure me as much as like a fucking brand new white belt. But I want to be pushed into being uncomfortable. And the more uncomfortable you are, I think that's where you start to shine. And I think the guys that tend to have the physical attributes don't like to be uncomfortable.
I think it's hard for them to deal with psychologically a lot of the time as well. Like, you know, if you're so used to winning, you're so used to being the strongest guy in the gym or something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when you're getting put in these, especially like in the gi, talking of Aaron, you know, one thing he loves to do is just fucking worm guard, wrap your lapel around your leg. And all these guys now that are younger and stuff, and we're able to beat him, can't posture up or do anything. And I mean, some people will argue, you know, it's like a stally technique or whatever, but it neutralizes their whole game then.
Well, because I mean, just talking about my own personal jiu-jitsu game. Like, I mean, I'm the exact opposite of what I would want in a jiu-jitsu student. So, like, to learn really good jiu-jitsu, I think like the ideal build is tall, thin, athletic. That way you can have all them physical attributes that I spoke about.
Yeah.
I'm the exact opposite of that. I'm a short, fat dude, okay? So, like, my jiu-jitsu has always been built upon slowing down the movement patterns of faster guys.
Okay.
Yeah. So, everything I do and I play is always designed to make you slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I like half guard. People don't run around your legs in half guard. I have, like, a standing half guard that I play called bear trap, which, like, works really well. Plants you in a spot so you can't really move, makes you have to do like 1 or 3 movement patterns that like is easy for me to identify. When you pass my guard, I like to play turtle a lot, because with turtle what most people do is they go and they seatbelt and they lock onto your back. I know where you are. Okay, what you're not doing is you're not moving around, you're not flowing around trying not to stay there. You're like, okay, seatbelt, hooks. It's ingrained into you from day one. Yeah. Okay, beginner's class. Okay, the guy turtles up, seatbelt, hooks, rear naked choke. Okay, you can play by numbers that movement pattern is going to happen. So I like to do them sort of things. I like to get on top, shut the fuck out of your hips, pass, submit. That's what I like to do, and that works best for me. And that's what I'm saying to you. With the old guys, that's what people go like, okay, jiu-jitsu for old guys. Well, jiu-jitsu for old guys, when you're rolling with younger guys, is shutting down their movements, shutting down the speed, shutting down all the physical attributes till what remains left is jiu-jitsu, if that makes sense. And then that way, you're going to get the most out of every single roll that you do, as opposed to being like, oh, the 20-year-olds in the gym are killing me. Now, I want to kill the 20-year-olds in my gym. You ask them, like, fucking, I make sure that when we're rolling, every single second of the roll that we're doing, I'm in control of. Yeah. That's what I try to do constantly.
Are you good for time, by the way? Yeah, cool. So in terms of the MMA and stuff, you've got a lot of guys now coming into the UFC. You've got a lot kind of going on. Has that changed your approach at all, or what's going on there? Have you got goals over the next year that you want to?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started coaching, I sat down and I wrote out 5 goals that I wanted to achieve when I was coaching, and I achieved 4 of them, and the fifth one is still the end goal, which is to train a UFC champion. That is always kind of what I'm pushing towards, and that's like another thing about coaching, which is if your coach is a competitor, so they're actively fighting, that's your coach. Their goal ultimately will be to win a UFC world champion, championship belt. If you're let me just put this, if anyone's listening to this and they want some advice, okay, and you haven't got a fight coming up, whatever weight division you're in, you should be trying to beat the UFC champion in that weight class. You're training, oh, I can't train, or, you know, why, what's going on, or like, oh, you know, I've got no opponents, or like, you know, life sucks, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sound. Okay, what weight are you? Lightweight. Well, you should be fucking training to beat Khabib. He sits at the top of that ladder. So he is your opponent. When you have no opponent, Khabib is the guy to beat, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, pick whatever weight class that you're in and aim to beat that guy. Because if you're not aiming to beat that guy, how the fuck are you ever going to beat that guy? Okay, that's what I think. In terms of kind of like making my goals. So as I said, so if I'm a competitor actively training and my dream is for me to be UFC champion, how the fuck is my dream for my student to be UFC champion?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
you're not going to want them to succeed. Yeah.
No, I mean it's my dream for Paddy Pimblett to be UFC lightweight world champion.
Yeah.
That is my dream. That's his dream. That means we connect and that we're both pushing towards the same thing. But if I just turn around to Paddy and went, it's still my dream for you to be UFC champion, but I've decided at my age I'm going to start a career myself and start fighting.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, mine and his dreams
clashing.
start pulling away from each other. And that's one of the things that I don't think some people take on board, which is, if your coach is still actively fighting, what is his goals, and do his goals match with your goals?
Yeah.
My goals are always universal, which is train UFC champion. If one of them wins a UFC belt, don't get me wrong, the goals will change. The goals will change into, I want him not just to be a UFC champion, but I want him to be the best UFC champion of all time, if that makes sense. Goals change as they get achieved, if that makes sense. So, I'm always looking towards what is the next set of goals. So, you know, like, I have my own personal goals of my own training and what I want to do with that training. I have goals with business and what I want to achieve in that business. And then I have goals with coaching and what I want to achieve as a coach. And in them things, they've all kind of got to mesh together, because you only have so many hours in a day, so you're trying to make it as easy on yourself as possible, I suppose.
How do you go about setting your goals and to sort of make sure that they all fit together in that way, or that they're, you know, because some people like to set goals in different ways. Some people like to kind of just aim at something vague and kind of go with it, or some people like, you know, the SMART goals, whatever. How do you kind of go about all of this?
I just kind of like sort of write down shit that I want to do, where I want to be, and then how do I get to them things in a few simple steps.
Okay.
Stuff, I mean, I'm not talking about like the smart, you know, achievable, realistic, that sort of stuff. I'm just thinking about, in general, you know, the other thing is, I think one of the things is people don't look too far into the future. Okay. So, for example, we have like a huge no-gi program in the gym. Like the gym, like is 80% no-gi. Okay. You know, most jiu-jitsu guys won't like hearing that, but try running a fucking top flight fight team with a gi program instead of a no-gi program, you'll find out. So I've got an 80% no-gi based gym. Okay, and we're building the gi elements of the gym up. But I have, what I said before, a huge kids program, and them kids are gi. So within the next 5 years, I've got to have a better gi program for them kids coming up, because my goal for them kids as an instructor isn't the same goal that I have for Paddy and Fishy in the UFC. My goal is for one of them kids, like when I opened the Whittle gym. Cut long story short, when I opened the Liverpool gym, when I first started teaching, my goal was to train a world champion. Okay? In the space of 2 years, Paddy, Molly and Fishy had all won Cage Warriors World Championships. Okay? They're on to the next stage now of going to UFC and looking for UFC gold. So, with the kids, when I opened the Whittle gym, it was a jiu-jitsu academy. So my goal was to train our jiu-jitsu world champion. That's the goal I have for them, and that's always been set. So, my goal is then, for now, as these kids are coming up, I've got to have a gi program in place for them that's going to allow one of them to try to become a jiu-jitsu world champion. That makes sense?
Yeah.
That's the goal. So like I say, I have different coaching goals. It's not just, okay, you know, I want to be a good coach. That's like, that's not that. I have to put in place stuff that's going to happen. So I've gave myself 5 years. Okay, that's when I've worked out that the majority of the kids in the class are 10. And by the time they're 15, they'll be into the adults program.
Yeah.
So I've given myself 5 years to build up a key program that will produce world champions.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like, and you have got a lot of really good young guys coming up. You know, you see them on a lot of the kind of junior stages on the podiums and stuff, and figure 4 promotions and all that. So definitely.
It's important to us. But that's what I'm saying to you. Most people don't look past 2 months' time.
Yeah. They're just thinking it's going to be the same all the time.
Yeah, it can't be the same all the time. It's got to be changed. It's got to be refreshed. It's got to be reassessed. And does this work or does it not work? And that's what I'm saying. So like my passions for coaching, for students, that sort of stuff. It's got to move with the times, if that makes sense.
I mean, where do you see these sports going? Because obviously there's a lot more paid events now happening within grappling, or you go UFC 10 years ago compared to now, how popular it is. Do you think they're becoming more mainstream still, or there's a place for more professionalism in grappling and stuff?
It's kind of crazy. I think grappling needs a Conor McGregor.
If you just pull the mic as well.
It's
all right.
Yeah. I think grappling needs like a Conor McGregor sort of character. I think someone that kind of brings the forefront. And I'll be honest with you, I think Gordon Ryan may be that guy. I don't know. But at this moment in time, people look... I mean, it's hard for us to say because we're in like the sort of grappling know-how, but like... most people don't give a shit about it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, people are like posting jiu-jitsu memes on Facebook and like, fucking, just got to strike, bro, all that sort of shit. But realistically, no one gives a fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to MMA, people give a fuck because it is a mainstream sport with champions that you can reflect on, and it gives people to build up. Yeah. Like, no one cares if you're the fucking local fucking sub-only champ.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Okay, so like even with my guys in the gym, I'm always constantly trying to push them to get themselves onto Polaris. Always trying to constantly push themselves to beat the guys that will get them into the big tournaments. Okay, because you want to be exposed to show your skills so people recognise it. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you may as well just ring up the guy that's Polaris middleweight champ or whatever, or Craig. Yeah, we'll ring Craig Jones up. We'll be like, all right, Craig, do you want to come to the gym and roll with one of my guys? And if he taps you, we'll just shake hands and then we'll put it on Facebook or whatever. That doesn't work. You want to be showing everyone exactly what you trained hard for and getting the recognition that you deserve for it. And grappling doesn't have that yet. And as big as like the IBJJF is and the IBJJF Worlds are, unless you're a proper jiu-jitsu nerd, you can't name who the world champions are in them weight divisions at the minute.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's where I think there's a big problem. And everyone's like, oh, let's get jiu-jitsu into the Olympics. And I think like that's like the worst thing that you could possibly do. Unless you're like a wrestling and judo nerd, you can't name who all the wrestling world champions are, who the Olympic champions are, and that sort of stuff. So then where do you take it? So what the jiu-jitsu guys and wrestlers and them sort of guys do when they've reached the pinnacles of the sport, they move into the big one. MMA, 1FC. That's what they do because they want recognition on a massive level for what they've achieved, and that's what everyone wants in their field of work. I'm sitting here. This is the first podcast that I've ever done, and I don't feel like I get the recognition I deserve for the time that I put into the sport, if that makes sense. That's not what's important to me. That doesn't stop me from feeling that way. That makes sense. If we never did this podcast, or I never did an interview or ever spoke to anyone ever again, that wouldn't bother me. But it's nice that you've took the time to say to me, hey, I want to speak to you about what you think about jiu-jitsu and about MMA and about your gyms and stuff. That's nice. That's a bit of recognition for me. So I was like, okay, I'd really like to do that. So when it comes to jiu-jitsu and grappling, how do we put these guys out there to get recognised by the public? And the only way to unfortunately do it is just like MMA, which is to chat shit about people, where people go, oh, them two are going to fight.
Yeah.
It's a bit
do you see
sad.
that because of like McGregor and obviously how he kind of, you know, and he did a real good job of getting to the top through all that and promoting the sport, but do you think that's kind of because you can see a lot of people trying to do it, but it's really fake or it's like forced? And
yeah, I fucking hate that shit. That's why Paddy's, you know, he keeps sneaking in and out the office before, but that's why Paddy's really good, because it's natural to him. Yeah. He likes talking shit about people. Yeah. You know what I mean? You might leave the office in a minute and he fucking starts talking shit about you.
I saw the what's he called? Soren, the guy's fighting.
Soren back, yeah.
He put there was a video a couple of months ago promoting the fight though, where he was talking about being a Viking or something like that, and it just seemed so
fake and put on.
Yeah. You know, like I kind of watched him talking. I was like, oh, it's cringy. You know.
Yeah, Paddy does that all himself, which Conor does all himself. You know, some people think that Conor's got a guy telling him lines in a mic when he's doing. Yeah, it's him.
There's a documentary of him from that someone did for like the Irish TV RTE Island or something. It's from a couple of years before he was kind of big though and blew up, and it's an interesting to watch from like a psychological perspective, because you see the way that he was. What would you call it? Like manufacturing himself into the athlete and mindset that he wanted to be.
See, the thing with Conor, I think Conor's a martial artist.
Yeah.
Like I don't consider and I think if I said like a few things here, like I consider George St. Pierre to be a martial artist. I consider Conor to be a martial artist.
Yeah.
Like I think them guys stand out in MMA,
but I think because of their approach to life and everything.
Exactly, because everything they do is with a purpose. Does that make sense? And I think that's one of the things that people kind of lack. You know, you see Conor's walk's not a natural walk. Does that make sense? Like the way he walks, he's like thinking about his spine and his movements and all sorts of other stuff's going on.
Yeah.
So what do you think he does when he throws a punch? Do you think that he just throws a punch out like every other fucking guy does? No, he's like focusing on like muscles, like which shape his arms in. He's focusing on what part is going to impact on a punch, what the delivery of the punch is afterwards.
And when you get to those top levels, that's the percentage that kind of...
It's not a surprise to me that he knocks everyone out. Everyone looks at him and is like, fucking, oh, well, yeah, he's got power in him. You know, he might not have had that power. He's worked on that. You know, one of the worst lies that people ever say is like, you can't teach power. That's fucking bollocks. That is complete and utter bollocks. Power comes from a lot of different places. It comes from forward momentum. It comes from some strength. It comes from rotational power. There's all different sorts of power. And people are like, you can't teach power. You fucking can, okay? What you've got to do then is you've got to take someone that's like Conor, that has not just these physical attributes, but he has the mental side of it to push that out there. I think, like I say, you take someone like George St. Pierre, Conor McGregor, you know, them sort of guys, that's why they're stars, because people look at them and they see that they could be them with hard work.
Well, that's the most, I think, fascinating thing about those guys. It's not like, Conor's leg kicks or something, or I don't look at George St. Pierre and think, oh yeah, Superman punch. It's more like it's more their approach and kind of where they've come from psychologically, and how they've just shaped themselves and completely changed their life through that industriousness, through that kind of...
They're Batman.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
no, Batman's not a superhero. Batman's the only superhero with no superpowers. Batman's a fucking guy that's got money and retrained himself to fucking do the stuff that he does. But everyone always says like Batman's the best superhero, if that makes sense, because he's just a normal guy. And sure, Conor and George St. Pierre are normal guys that have worked hard to get where they are. Okay, and then you take someone that isn't a martial artist, that's like John Jones. He's a natural athlete.
Yeah.
That like fucking is just a wrecking ball when he gets in the cage. But he's not that martial artist that I think that them two are. You know what I mean? You get guys that are in the middle of them two things. Like I think like Mighty Mouse is like the middle ground. He's like a fucking outstanding athlete that's also a martial artist, if that makes sense. You know, he's always like hunting for that sort of perfection. And then he gets taken out by someone that's an athlete. if that makes sense. And I think that's like the real sort of question. So like, it's like Khabib, like everyone's saying like Khabib and Conor. Like, I consider Khabib to be an athlete and Conor to be a martial artist, and I think Conor will win that fight. Right. I think,
even with the kind of time out of the, I mean, do you believe in like that kind of ring rust thing? Yeah, people say.
That's what we're talking about. So an athlete would maybe say, oh, you know what, I want to break for a little bit and not train.
Yeah.
But a martial artist won't do that. Look at GSP. He took the time off. He wasn't just sitting on his hands going, you know what, I'm just going to fucking play Mario Kart all day. He wasn't doing that shit. He was actively treating himself to get better. So do I think that Conor has took the time that he's had out from the sport to kind of make himself better? Yeah, I think he's done that. You know what I mean? I think we'll see improvements. And that, I suppose, like I say, that's where I look at the whole MMA scene. You know, what do we need to make grappling get on the forefront? Well, we need a martial artist, someone that's going to be like outspoken, that people know, like, oh, could you be like that, guys? Because we did have one. It was Hoist. Right. Hoist started all this. Okay, Hoist wasn't an athlete, was he? No, Hoist was the martial artist that came in as like, hey, you know, I'm going to show you that you can do this, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh shit, I want to learn jiu-jitsu. Okay, now this modern age of coming up, don't look at Hoist. Everyone looks at Conor McGregor. Everyone's putting fucking tying the hair and man buns and throwing spinning back kicks on punch bags. But back in the day, we had Hoist. Yeah. And I think grappling needs that guy to break the sport out.
That's interesting.
And that's why I said I thought it might have been Gordon, but you know, it might be Nicky. It might be Nicky Ryan. You know what I mean? Nicky Ryan to me looks like a kid that like fucking probably gets pushed around for his bus money, and then more kids might like be like, oh shit, did you see Nicky Ryan fucking triangle Palhares or fucking something like that, which will just spare off like some inspiration, and then he might become the superstar of jiu-jitsu.
What's the fact, like, you know, they choosing it based on size and fit, you know, because if you see a guy who's fucking built like some, you know, built like a brick shithouse, it's kind of less compelling. Whereas when you see, you know, Hoist come out and he's, especially in like those first UFCs where these guys are like massive and it, you know, there's no kind of drug testing going on or anything like that, but he comes out, choke him out, whatever, from the top. That's where it's quite kind of compelling, I think, for someone to watch is. Well, the little guy, David v Goliath.
I don't think anyone ever watched one of Hoist's fights and was like, I want Hoist to lose.
Yeah.
Until he maybe like fought Sakuraba in Pride, when everyone was kind of like, yeah, let's watch Hoist get beat this time. But that's the thing, like, you need someone in jiu-jitsu that everyone wants to win. That makes sense. Yeah. And I don't think we have that. I mean, can you think of any grapplers on the top of your head that you would think are, you know?
I mean, I think Gary Tonin was pretty kind of like, I don't think there were too many people who weren't behind him, but like
when he fought Palhares, that's like a really good example because you're rooting for him.
But yeah, now obviously, you know, like you were saying before, he's going over to MMA because that's where it's like the testing ground, right? Because, you know, suddenly there's not this rule set. There's all these other, there is a rule set, but there's not all these constraints on like.
Well, then you have two questions that you would ask yourself then about Gary Tonin, which was, is he crossing over to MMA because that's what he wants to do? Or is he crossing over to MMA because there's not enough money in jiu-jitsu where he can make a living to sustain his competitive career? Does that make sense?
I mean, I couldn't say without, but from the little I do know of him, I think that mindset is like the challenge, you know, it's like...
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying to you. So then he is pushing himself into new boundaries. But what I'm saying is, if the challenge was there for him in jiu-jitsu, plus him getting paid, would he maybe have made the jump?
Right.
That makes sense. It's like that's why I like what Gordon's doing. Gordon's like, right, I've won everything there is to achieve in no gi. I'm going to put the gi on. I'm going to show all you fuckers that I'm going to be the best in the gi, and then I'm going to move into MMA, and then I'm going to do the same thing there. That's a massive ask that he's asking himself to do. Yeah, it's like a massive ask. That's why I like them guys. I think that they really put the heart and soul into what they do. You know, we've had Oliver Tarza train here at the gym, and like I really fucking respect them guys. The amount of hard work and training they put into a sport that there is no money, no financial incentive, and they just want to be the best in. It's like wrestling. It's like amateur wrestling.
Well, that's why you've got to have, I think, so much respect for people who do MMA, because the side of it that I've seen so much of is, you know, people putting so much into it, and then, you know, 30, 35, they've got nothing to show for it except a few injuries, and, you know, like that's the heartbreaking side of it for me, is when people don't manage to make the money out. There's so few people that are like Conor McGregor, or even people in the UFC kind of but when people are everyday training, you've got to respect that, because there's no security in that. It's not like you've got your pension scheme and you've got everything looked out of. It's purely people doing it for the love, doing it for
of course. And that's why I said to you before, as a coach, it's important. Someone's going to put their career in your hands, okay?
Yeah,
that is very important. So what happens in here is, so I can tell different stories. So for example, I'm going to tell Paddy's story, because he's the most well known. Paddy was a kid that came into the gym that had a really fucking shitty attitude towards everything outside the gym. It was just like, fucking, no one does him any favours, no one gives him any breaks, no one does anything like this. Paddy turned up, trained every day, said, I'm going to be the fucking best in the world one day, I'm going to be a world champion. He did that every day from when he was 15 up until the day when he became world champion.
Yeah,
that's what he done. He done it inside and out every day. People love him, people hate him, people give him shit, people slag him off, people don't know him. Okay, this is the same kid that will fucking, if you ring him and say to him, listen, I'm just letting you know that, like, my daughter's your biggest fan and she would like to come into the gym to see you, he'll do that. If you rang him to say, my daughter's in hospital and she's sick, he'll go and see her.
I've seen the older Hay stuff. That
he is that guy. But at the same time, he's the same guy that if you said to him, I'm going to smoke you in rolling tonight, he will fucking put it on you in rolling tonight. If you challenge him online, he'll give you shit for it. You know what I mean? He is him. He's being himself. So Paddy's story is one where basically he came into the gym, said, I want to be the best in the world. His mum and dad were like, oh no, you need to stay in school, you need to do these sorts of things. And then I'm saying to him, look, I think you've fucking got what it takes here. Like, I'll support you. If you want to do this, I'll put my fucking, I'll put on the line for you, let's do it. And he did that. And I will do that. If you come into the gym and I think you have what it takes, I will encourage and nurture you to put everything you have into doing that. That's why most gyms don't have full-time athletes and fighters. I've got loads of them. I've got loads of lads that are doing this full-time. They do little side jobs, they do other things. That's one of the great things about what we've done here, because Paddy, Molly and Fishy were all non-UFC signed fighters being able to support themselves through fighting.
Yeah.
And everyone like, we get a lot of stick at our gym off other gyms, and it's just jealousy and stuff. But no other gym in the UK is doing that. They're not supporting their fighters. Do they do private lessons? Yeah. Do they teach classes? Yeah, of course they do. But their main income comes from one thing: fighting.
Yeah.
What other people can say that they do that? Not signed to the UFC. Now they're all starting to get signed to the UFC. They know that if anything happens and they get cut from the UFC, they're not going back to kind of like, oh, I'm going to get my taxi license and I'm going to drive taxis or work on the door. They know how to make a living from fighting.
Yeah.
That's important, and most people don't take that into account. So all you coaches out there that are coaching people, ask yourself what you're really doing with them. Are you helping them build a career? Or are you just helping them to get to one stage of the career and then not know what to do with them afterwards?
It's really good kind of, seeing the passion and stuff that you've got as a coach and for the sport and what you're doing here. That's part of why I kind of really like doing this podcast, is because I get to talk to and meet people and hopefully kind of spread that attitude to the world. But I do have a couple of questions that I'd like to wrap things up with.
Yeah, of course.
So the first one, they're along similar lines. The first one is, if you could pick up the phone and talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
Stop eating crisp butties and bars of chocolate every night and be on the mat more.
And then the other thing that is kind of, it's similar, but it's a bit of a shift. It's like, so the average kind of viewer for this is around my age, and I've got a lot of friends. Life's confusing. They've been told they want to go to university, or whatever. Maybe they're in their first job, don't know what's going on, but it's not kind of what they were sold by school and their parents. And what would your piece of advice for a person in that situation be about what?
Okay, my advice for this is, because I work around young lads all day. Okay, first thing is, put your phones down and learn how to talk to people, okay? You can't build relationships with people online, okay? You need to be able to speak to people, you need to be able to convey your thoughts, you need to be able to tell them what you want and what you don't want and what you like. And once you can start building relationships with people, all sorts of doors will open up to you. One of the biggest things I find about like the youth of today, sound like my dad or my granddad, is not making eye contact, that sort of stuff. They're locked into the phone. So what they're doing is they're locking on the phones and they're judging themselves about how other people live.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a huge
Just
mistake.
the highlights and peaks. Yeah.
Sit down, ask yourself where you want to be. If you want to be a professional footballer and you're 24 years old, fuck it off. If you want to be a professional cage fighter and you're 40 years old, fuck it off, okay? Get yourself some realistic goals and targets, okay? You know, the whole thing about like, oh, look, you know, don't work for a living, you know, like, do what you want to do and all that sort of stuff. That's fucking great advice coming from people that probably don't do that, okay?
Yeah.
So, if you are passionate about something and you're young and you really love doing something, can you make it a living? Yes, you can. Will it be hard? It's going to be the fucking hardest thing you're ever going to do, and it might cause you to not enjoy your passion anymore, okay? Sit down and write out realistically what you would like to do. Do them things on the weekend that you like to do. See if you can turn it into a full-time business. If you can turn it into a full-time business, great. If you can't, at least you have a job. The job that you take on, work your fucking arse off to get somewhere with it. If you're working your arse off and you're not getting somewhere with it, try to move yourself into another area of the same sort of thing that you enjoy, that you can work your arse off and be passionate about, if you can't do it on your own. Like, that is a massive thing. I think work ethic is one of the massive things that people lack.
Yeah.
So, for example, use myself, like, I wanted to learn jiu-jitsu, so I flew the other side of the planet to learn it. Lived in a gym, lived that life. Great, okay? People messaged me. I put a post up yesterday saying, look, you know, I don't really do private lessons anymore unless you've been doing privates with me for years, but I said I'll do privates with someone that's passionate, not a time waster. Like, I'll work with you because that's what I enjoy doing. And then lo and behold, all sorts of people are messaging me and like, oh, I'll get back to you. I'm like, fuck off, don't waste my time, okay? If you waste time, you are wasting the one thing that you're never gonna get back. Okay, so if you decide that you want to be Jiu-Jitsu World Champion, put yourself in the gym every day, graft your arse off and become Jiu-Jitsu World Champion. Don't say you're going to do it and then not do it, okay? And then be telling everyone that that's what you are doing online and all them sorts of things, because you get exposed and you don't reach the goal and then you waste a lot of years of your time doing it.
Yeah.
Okay? That is very important. It's something that we actually, this sort of thing is what we actually emphasise into our kids program, which is, most people when they run a kids program, they don't say to them, okay, they're like, oh, let's do a little bit of self-defense, let's do a little bit of this. We're like, with our kids program, we're like, okay, you're going to be the best at jiu-jitsu, we're going to fucking train you like you're adults, we're going to embellish this fucking hardcore attitude into you that basically you've got to fucking win all costs. If you lose, it's great, but you come back into the gym, you work on your mistakes, you take responsibility and ownership for them, and then you put it out there. Because most people don't do that with the kids. Most people protect the kids from that thing. That's the wrong thing to do. Like, you know, I'll give you a really good example of it. My son entered the World Championships. He lost a round by a point. He got upset about it. And I just said to him, I was like, well, if you'd have practiced this knee slice pass they've been working on for you from that position, you would have won it. So we go back to the gym, we practice on it, tears stopped. He's like, you're right, okay, that's great. And all he's been drilling since then is that knee slice pass. That's the sort of thing that is going to get you somewhere. It's going to make you employable. It's going to make you so that people want to be around you. It's not going to be so that when you wake up every morning, you're like, oh, woe is me. Oh, fucking hell, like, life's dealt me a bad hand. Because ultimately, you're only going to get what you put in back. Okay, so if you work hard, you graft your arse off, you surround yourself with a good coach, you can make it in jiu-jitsu, you can make it in MMA. If you don't do them things, you're just a casual trainer that's doing what they want to do while they make excuses to everyone else or why they don't achieve them goals.
Yeah, no, that's some good advice. And you know, like I was saying before, that passion that you've got for it not only kind of comes across in just talking to you, but you know, you see it in the results of you guys and stuff. And I really kind of appreciate you doing this for me, because you know people do it for free, and I don't have the opportunity to make a podcast or do anything without people kind of wanting to engage with me on that front. So
no, I really enjoyed having a rant without someone interrupting me for a change. It was really good.
So yeah, so thanks for doing this, and you know if you ever want to come on again as well, feel free, because I'm going to kind of be trying to get a bit more consistent with it, and you know off the back of this talk feeling a bit more motivated to go and do some shit rather than sit down and be procrastinate. So
good.
Yeah,
thanks very much for having me on.
Thank you. Cheers. Big thanks to Paul for doing this. I really enjoyed recording this episode. If you guys enjoyed it too, remember to subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me on SoundCloud and follow it on iTunes if you listen to podcasts over there. And the Facebook page Digital Gnosis as well. I'll keep you informed of upcoming guests and when I publish new content. Thanks.